Hello and welcome to this special edition of Young Turks. As you know, we've turned 21 and it is our effort and endeavor to continue to put the spotlight on first-generation entrepreneurs. I have with me two gentlemen who started their startup story in 2006, a few years after Young Turks began chronicling the startup story of the Indian entrepreneurial ecosystem. Bhavin Trivikraman, many thanks for joining us here on Young Turks. I don't think people imagine that you've been around for so long.
Yeah.
How does it feel having been around for almost 15 years?
More.
Yeah.
17 now.
Yeah, 17. Yeah.
No, it feels great. I mean, actually, it's hard for me not to keep going back to all the positive regulatory developments that have happened in the last 3 months. It just feels like we have a new lease on life now. It just feels, it just feels like step one, of a new world. So
he's smiling.
Because I want to go back to something that you started with. We met right here in New York.
New York, exactly.
We went to NYU, we were getting our PhDs in economics, met in the computer lab playing games, and that's how it all started.
Decided to get into the gaming business and turn entrepreneur.
And not in our wildest dreams had we thought that 17 years later we'll be back in New York City in Central Park speaking to you, so it's... It's been incredible.
What are the odds of that?
Very low. It's been incredible.
Yeah. It's been an incredible journey for the two of you as well. So let's talk about this 17-year journey. And you just spoke about the regulatory environment in India, and I could see you smile because obviously it's been a lot of pressure dealing with the uncertainty, not knowing which way this is going to go. But that's recent. What has been the high point, the low point of the last 17 years?
Oh, there's so many. It's been a journey like this, right? So there's been so many high points and so many low points. I wish I could pick one up, but before the regulatory stuff you're saying.
I'd pick one.
Okay,
the first one that comes to my mind is the first time something like this happened, right? So when the High Court in Madras in Chennai said that you cannot play rummy. It is illegal to play rummy for money. That's when I was very jolted, because we'd done all our due diligence. We'd read the law inside and out.
This is 2012, by the way.
This is 2012. We were told by the Supreme Court, and then not once but twice, that rummy is a game of skill. You can offer it for money, and so on and so forth. And so we did all of our research and came down here to start rummy. And then for the court to do that was like a jolting moment, but
that was a low point. But now I'm thinking of many high points.
Go ahead, go for the high point.
One was HDFC approving our payment services.
Yes.
That was the first time a major bank agreed to provide payment services to online gaming. That was a huge deal.
Yes.
Then there was, a low point followed by a high point. The low point was first Google actually blacklisting us because they thought we were a gambling business. And then subsequently, we worked extensively with the Google policy team, and the Google policy team eventually made an exception in their policy and terms in India because they recognized that skill gaming is a legitimate business and rummy is a game of skill, so they made an exception for skill gaming. And, we were at the forefront for leading Google and Facebook eventually to start accepting ads from us, without which, if you look at it, payments and the ability to advertise is like oxygen and water for a business. And so those were, now it goes so far back, but those were major high points for the business.
Yeah, but 10 years on, even after all of these various court battles, many which have gone in your favor, you're still having to explain game of skill versus game of chance, right?
That's true. But to lesser people.
Yes.
To lesser people. Far more many investors, people in the media like yourselves, people in the government, like many more people, understand now that difference than they did back in 2010, 2011. Another major high point is our funding round last year, where we raised 75 million at, 2.5 billion valuation and became a unicorn, major high point for us, especially in a market that was very, very tough. End of 2021, the market's really starting to go down, and we closed that deal in March of 2022. So very proud of that.
Yeah, and you timed it right as well. But you talked about that $75 million and the unicorn status that you've acquired on account of it. So what's the next big milestone that you're hoping to achieve? I mean, are you looking at raising more funds? Are you looking at an IPO a couple of years down the line? And more importantly, profitability, because for a large part of your existence, you have been profitable, or for most part of your existence, you've been profitable, except for FY22, where you did make losses on account of significant spends on advertising and marketing. So is that likely to continue to happen? What's the story on that front?
No, I mean, I think I think we're going to start seeing dividends now from all the investments that we have made in the last 2 years. I think we're well on our way to profitability. That's what I would say. And also, even from the point of view of those 2 years, right, we look at profitability and growth very differently. For us, it's a question of whether when we are going out and acquiring customers, are those customers going to be profitable for us, Because all our customers, whether it be in fantasy sports or on our rummy business, what we are always looking at is what is called the unit economics of the business. What is my cost of acquiring a customer? What is the lifetime value I'm creating from a customer? And as long as the lifetime value of a customer is greater than the cost I'm spending to acquire a customer, it is actually a profitable customer. It might mean that in the short run, you're investing in the business to acquire a lot of customers and driving growth, but the business has extremely good long-term profitability.
Okay, but in the interim, you said long-term profitability, but in the interim, because it's a very competitive space as well at this point in time, is it harder to acquire customers, which also means that do you need to spend a lot more to acquire customers? So this scenario of having to spend more to acquire more, how long do you believe that that's going to go on for?
Well, I mean, so I think I'll kind of turn that question around a little bit and say that we're super efficient in how we acquire our customers. I mean, just before we started this conversation, we were talking about AI. I mean, we have been building machine learning models, data science models, to help us in both acquisition and monetization of our customers for 10 years now, which is why we've been very, very effective at acquiring customers at I would say very reasonable costs. And again, coming back to your point about profitability, as I said, it's right around the corner.
I just wanted to add there that while we acquire a lot of players for our fantasy sports platform, we're also very scientific about cross-monetizing them on other games that we offer, like Rummy that we've been doing for the longest time. And therefore, for us, unit economics make more sense because while we're spending a certain amount to acquire them, we're making that money back much faster because we just don't have fantasy, but we also have Rummy and now poker and other games that we have on the platform.
Yeah, I mean, people are playing fantasy sports, at the end of the day, like fantasy sports is a game in which you're done kind of pretty quickly, right? You create a team, you enter a contest, and then you watch what happens in the game, like how is my player doing?
Yeah.
But
how much of this stuff do you guys do individually? Yourselves, how much time do you spend on your own games or your competitors' games?
We can't. Our policies don't allow our employees, and we are our company's employees to play on our own apps.
Oh, you could play on Dream 11.
Yes, we could, but I don't want to give my money to Dream 11.
But, I've seen a plethora of reports, most recently the Google Bain Temasek report that talks about what this market could look like and the kind of explosion that we're likely to see as far as the gaming sector is concerned. I want to understand from the two of you, because you've been around for 17 years now, what are you seeing that's different? What are the big structural changes that you're betting on to realize this sort of headroom for growth that everyone's talking about?
Right now, in our mind, the biggest one is the regulatory changes that are going to come about, because that is just going to give us so much clarity in what we can do and what we cannot do. It is going to really help us innovate. And unless you have real innovation, you're not going to really see that growth that everyone is talking about. And until now, we were stifled for innovation. You couldn't innovate because there are two games that the courts have said you can do, and that's what most people are doing. Some people are taking chances and doing other games, and that's okay. We chose not to do them. But now we all have the ability to innovate, to come up with games that have to pass a few quantitative tests. So it's no longer going to be subjective. quantitative tests that are going to determine whether you can offer a game or not. And that's going to be a game changer. What that's also going to do is legitimize the entire industry. A lot of the operators that are operating under the carpet are going to go away because most people are then going to legitimately, play games.
So again, for the benefit of our viewers who are watching, what he's talking about is essentially the regulation that MeitY has put out, the central government has put out, and of course state governments are operating differently. Courts are bringing in their own verdicts at this point in time, but essentially the central government has said that set up a self-regulatory body, and that self-regulatory body will certify whether a game is a game of skill, a game of chance, whether it's betting, and betting of course will not be allowed and that will be illegal. And so you believe that this, even though it's yet to be operationalized, is the big game changer for the sector?
It is, but I want to add that MeitY is not saying what is a game of skill or game of chance. They're going to certify games based on a certain set of tests that have been laid out. And as long as those tests have been passed, then games will be certified as permissible games and therefore allowed to be offered in our country.
Okay.
And another thing this is going to do is, a lot of investors, a lot of capital has been sitting on the sidelines waiting for clarity, I mean, innovation needs capital also, and so it's really, as I said, like I said it in the beginning, right? I feel like we're back to step one, except this is a super exciting step one.
So it's 2006 all over again.
Yes, but without having to explain to every single person out there that what we're doing is legit, because now the government is going to certify, and help us grow and innovate. So I think it's quite an incredible time in the space right now.
Speaking of capital and speaking of innovation, you're putting your own money to work as well on trying to build out the ecosystem. What's that bet about?
You're talking about Games24x7 Ventures.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for us, it's not just about, a financial bet. Obviously, it is a financial bet. We will make financially prudent investment decisions. But I just think we have learned so much about running, B2C businesses. I mean, in particular gaming, but we understand so much about whether it be acquiring customers, whether it be delivering great experiences to them, whether it be monetizing them, creating lifetime engagement and value for them. Like, we just believe, particularly from the point of using data science, technology, and AI, we just believe we have a lot to contribute to the ecosystem out there. So we'll be looking for investments where we can obviously deploy capital, but also deploy the learnings that we have had over the last 15 years.
And that's an interesting point, because I want to understand from the two of you the learnings about the Indian consumer and about the Indian market, and specifically the monetization ability of companies like yours when we talk about the Indian consumer. Because everybody throws these big numbers, but within that large addressable market that everybody talks about, the monetizable market is much smaller, and that is what is showing up in valuations now of many of the unicorns that were demanding or commanding the kinds of valuations that they were. So what is the big lesson and the learning there in terms of the addressable market and the monetizable market?
I think, I think fantasy sports is a great example, right? Very, very large monetized user base. Much lower spends per user, but very large user base. I think people in India are willing to spend on entertainment as long as they see value from it, So I don't think gaming per se has that problem right now.
Okay.
Particularly, me and Bhavin talk about this always. Like, our thesis always has been that India will be, even from 2005, that India will be a pay-to-win market, not a pay-to-play. That Indians are going to be stingy with spending money on, like, I'm paying you just to entertain me, but if I'm paying you with some, with a likelihood of winning something back, and where I can deploy my skills and have fun and entertainment, I'm willing to do that. I think that's one of the reasons you're seeing, significant and substantial monetization in the skill gaming space. If you look at the other part of the gaming space, the monetization is actually not that strong. So I think gaming's pretty unique in that sense.